Good evening. It's the start of a brand new week and you're watching The Big Story, where we discuss the hottest topics of the day. I'm Dylan Ang, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. We begin with the latest in Malaysia as Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad handed in his resignation to the King earlier today. Sources say his resignation is likely to be followed by declarations of support for him to continue in power until the end of the current parliamentary term. Dr. Mahathir's resignation is likely to have been tactical, with a view to undoing the Pakatan Harapan transition agreement. Now, under that agreement, Mr. Anwar was supposed to replace the 94-year-old Dr. Mahathir before the next election due in 2023. Dr. Mahathir's resignation also saw the departure of dozens of lawmakers from the Pakatan Harapan coalition that left it short of a majority in parliament. His party Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia, which consists of 26 MPs, announced today it has left the coalition. In the meantime, 11 MPs from Anwar Ibrahim's party Keadilan Rakyat also quit the party to form an independent bloc. The departing lawmakers are led by PKR's Deputy President Azmin Ali, who is Economic Affairs Minister, and Minister of Housing and Local Government Zuraida Kamarudin. The exit of these lawmakers has left PH short of a simple majority in Parliament, meaning that the current government has effectively fallen. Now, joining me now to discuss the latest developments in Malaysia is Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teoh. Shannon, now Dr. Mahathir also quit as chairman of his own party. Now, do you think he'll set up an independent party or align himself with an existing one?
Well, he's quit as chairman, not as a member yet. One assumes that still this means that he's unhappy with the current leadership of the party. What we understand is that the party president, Tan Sri Muhyiddin, wanted to align Bersatu with UMNO and work with UMNO in the new government. And this was not palatable to Tun Mahathir, who, while he's happy for anyone to support him as Prime Minister, and he wasn't keen with the idea of having top UMNO officials as cabinet ministers in his government, having campaigned to, get rid of them because he claimed corrupt. So sorry, I think I lost you there. Are we still on?
Yeah, we're still on.
Yeah, so that's the situation that we have moving forward. That's why he's quit as chairman. But is he leaving the party? We don't know yet. And if it does, what are his options? Well, DAP, Amanah, everyone else seems to want to support him as Prime Minister. They'd love to have him on board.
Right. Now, Shannon, of course, the question on everyone's minds, Mahathir and Anwar had a gentleman's agreement now that Anwar would succeed him as Prime Minister. Now, do you think we've just seen the killer blow to Mr. Anwar's chances of becoming Prime Minister?
I think that Anwar becoming Prime Minister in the short term now is not a realistic proposition. If at the very least what has happened now really destabilizes politics in the country, and it seems that the candidate that people are prepared to back right now is Mahathir. There's a very clear backing for Mahathir. Not so clear for Anwar himself, even though he may not be outside of the governing coalition at this point. If at all, I think Anwar would have to wait slightly longer than he expected in the first place, or might be out of the equation altogether. A lot of this hinges on what is happening right now in the palace. We spoke earlier, Anwar was at the palace trying to figure out what was going on there, but now Mahathir is at the palace, and we are waiting to see what might go on in that meeting.
Right. Now, speaking of the palace and Mr. Anwar, of course, he like you mentioned, he had an audience with the king earlier this afternoon. Now, how was his demeanor, after the meeting?
He was all smiles when approached by reporters. He was very confident that Mahathir would not be forming a government with UMNO, basically saying that those who are trying to do this are treacherous. They are trying to betray the public mandate given in the last election. So that is the language that's being used by Anwar, by DAP leaders, by Amanah leaders. They are saying that Mahathir, no way Mahathir is going to work with UMNO. On the other hand, we have to remember that aside from written statements from Mahathir that he has quit as Prime Minister and that he has quit as Chairman of Bersatu, he hasn't actually about.
No apologies there. I think we have experiencing some technical difficulties with our Malaysia Bureau Chief, Shannon Teoh. Shannon?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Sorry, where do we
Shannon
get
is
cut
still
off?
here. Oh, we thought I lost you.
Must be something. It must be a lot
Yeah.
of people sending messages about this one. Um, but basically, we haven't heard from Mahathir himself. He's only issued written statements about quitting as Prime Minister, as Chairman of Parliament, but he's not actually spoken to anyone about what he thinks about what has gone on, what is his own role. It's been people speaking on his behalf.
Mm. Now, Shannon, with that being said, the Pakatan Harapan government has been in power for less than 2 years. Now, what were its main hurdles, or how can a new government address them?
Well, Mahathir himself, when asked about his own cabinet, often would rate it at 40 to 50%, barely passing mark. In his own mind, he agreed with criticisms that they were not performing, they were not governing properly. So that would be one thing that they would have to look at. Either the fact that they are not governing properly, or that there is a public perception that they haven't done anything since coming to power. Uh, Aside from that, on the more political front, they've been under heavy attacks for ostensibly being anti-Malay, an allegation heard by UMNO and PAS. And this has seen their support amongst the Malay majority really slide to very low levels, something at 20 to 30%. This is something that they have to correct. And those who wanted big proponents of this so-called national alliance that they tried to pull together yesterday, to include UMNO and PAS in. Their argument is that if you include UMNO and PAS in, then you strengthen your Malay base. You get these guys who, criticize you for being not friendly enough to Malay voters. Well, then you're on board now. You can come and help us fix it. So these are whoever's in government after this, you've got to look at these two things, right? Governing properly really means making sure the economy is running well, and this sort of ethnic issues that arise in Malaysia all the time.
Now, Shannon, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that Dr. Mahathir has enough numbers to form a majority in the parliament, but does that mean that an election will be held?
So right now, the situation is that no one is in fact denying that Mahathir has the numbers. Those on the Pakatan Harapan side are saying he has the numbers. Those on UMNO and PAS side say that, they have enough numbers to support Mahathir to be Prime Minister as well. The numbers range anywhere from 123 to over 139. What this means is that if the king says to Mahathir, look, you have the majority, the makeup of government might be different, why don't you continue? And he agrees, then, the Prime Minister is still Mahathir, but we might have a different cabinet. But if Mahathir still refuses, or if the king decides, I'm not certain that you have the majority, then, Malaysia could be heading for its second election in as many years.
Well, thank you so much for your insights, Shannon. That was, of course, Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teoh. Now, Dr. Mahathir was scheduled to meet the King at 5 p.m. today. For the latest, do visit our website, it's straitstimes.com. Now, moving on to the coronavirus outbreak next, the number of cases in Singapore remains at 89 after the Health Ministry reported 0 new cases yesterday. Meanwhile, 2 more patients have been discharged. A total of 51 have fully recovered since the first case was confirmed a month ago. Now, elsewhere, China reported 409 new infections and 150 deaths. The daily number of newly cured and discharged patients surpassed that of new confirmed infections for the 6th straight day. Now, outside of China, South Korea has the most number of cases. The total number surged to over 700 this morning, compared to 31 cases reported as of February 18th. That marks a jump of nearly 25 times in less than a week. Now, 7 people in the country have died from the virus, and South Korea has raised its coronavirus alert to the highest level.
Churches in South Korea were on high alert on Sunday as the number of coronavirus cases in the country jumped to 602. More than half of new cases have been linked to the Shincheonji Church after a 61-year-old woman known as Patient 31 tested positive for the virus last week. The church in the city of Daegu said it will fully cooperate with health authorities. The South Korean president raised the country's infectious disease alert to the top level as the death toll in the country reached 6, enabling it to forcibly prevent public activities and order the temporary closure of schools.
Following the advice of infectious disease experts, the government will vastly strengthen the overall response system by raising the alert level to the highest level. The situation has become completely different since the outbreak of mass infection within the Xinjiang group.
In China, there were reports of another fall in new cases outside the epicenter of the outbreak, but World Health officials warned that it's too early to make predictions about the outbreak, as new infections increased elsewhere. Italy on Sunday scrambled to contain the biggest outbreak of the virus in Europe. Cases there jumped to over 100. The government has shut off the worst affected towns in the north of the country and cancelled a string of public events. That after the first 2 deaths from the disease were recorded in the wealthy regions of Lombardy and Veneto. 2 people contracted the virus in Venice, which is packed with tourists for the annual carnival. Authorities announced the final 2 days of the carnival would be cancelled.
And those are our top stories for today. Keep up to date with news in Singapore and around the world at straitstimes.com. I'm Dylan Ang. See you tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.